friend from a few years ago invited us to his house for a party. We all piled into my brother's truck SUV thing and ran some errands before heading over. One of our friends, Chris, invited his childhood friend Lucas to the party without informing the one who invited us. Our host did not like Lucas at all, but Chris had little to no awareness of anything and decided to bring him along. While we're running errands, Lucas rambles on about how he needs to get laid and that maybe this girl Tina will put out. Tina and Chris previously had crushes on each other, but it never went anywhere. So we get to our friend's house. Chris's girlfriend at the time is there. She had broken up with him a while before, but because she had heard that Chris was interested in Tina, she decided to take him back. She was a terrible, vindictive, manipulative, violent, abusive piece of shit. She had actually sliced up Chris's arm really bad once because she was angry. Anyway, her and Lucas were super close. Suspiciously close, if you ask me. And they both kept glaring at Tina, whispering to each other. I had even seen Lucas seemingly kissing the back of Chris's girlfriend's neck, but I honestly wanted no parts in any of that. Those two genuinely scared me. The end of the night is coming. Lucas had already done a lot to piss off the host of the party, almost spilling his drink on their very expensive pool table and just generally being a pompous douche, but wasn't kicked out. Then to add more to it, he began following Tina around very closely and being really creepy towards her. Take note, Lucas was 19 at the time and Tina was 14. By the way, I don't condone Chris for trying to date her, as he was also 19. So pretty much everyone at the party sees what he's doing. They see Tina repeatedly tell him to leave her alone. They watch as she attempts to escape him, but no one did a damn thing about it. I looked at my brother, who was the oldest one there, and he was pretty much acting like nothing was happening. I looked around. Nobody gave a shit. I said out loud, "You're really gonna make me do it? Fine." Lucas is twice my height, slightly muscular, mentally unstable. He's schizophrenic, but that's not what worried me. It was a sense of being better than everyone else, and quick temper, and apparently he's into sexually harassing underage girls. I walked by Tina, who was running from him, crying, and shoved Lucas on the chest to keep him back. I was firmly scolding him, telling him to fuck off, and that he can't mess with other people for his own entertainment. He scoffed, looked at me like I was less than him, and said, "Actually, I can." No, he can't, but I gathered that he has no understanding of compassion, so I played on what he could understand. I told him that he wasn't invited, that the host doesn't like him, but he still allowed him to stay and have fun with friends, that by disrespecting his guest, he's disrespecting him and his home. Lucas agreed and said he'd stop. Then Chris returned from wherever he was, got the scoop about what happened, and proceeded to chew out his friend inside the house. I walked over to Tina to make sure she was all right. And wouldn't you know that Chris's girlfriend was faking her concern so hard it made me physically sick. I knew that she had egged Lucas on. She didn't give a shit about Tina. And then on top of that, everyone comforting Tina had just sat and watched her get harassed by that asshole. Needless to say, I was pissed off that I was the only one to intervene in a group consisting of more than 15 people. If Chris had been there, he would have stopped it, but it wouldn't have happened if he was around. After that, I told a few friends there that just because Lucas has schizophrenia doesn't mean they should fear him. It also doesn't excuse him for being a shitty person, as I had heard many people who knew him say that it isn't his fault, since he's mentally ill. I made it very clear to my close friends that they should never tolerate or excuse things like that, just because someone has a mental disorder. Lucas knew what he was doing, and he knew that no one would step in. I don't even know what would have happened if I hadn't been there. How long would it have taken for someone to help her? Lucas left the party after Chris was done yelling at him, and Tina was walked home by the host of the party to make sure the creep wasn't hanging around. Before we all left, after Tina calmed down, I was informed that Lucas tried to get her to agree to have sex with him, and she said no, which he responded to with great disdain. I'm no longer friends with anyone in this story, except for one of the guys there who genuinely had no idea something was going on. He's often very oblivious to things around him. Those people were all drama addicts and just generally toxic to be around. So I say, good riddance. Way back in 2005, my girlfriend, now wife, decided to move in together. Our meager salaries allowed us to rent a little one-bedroom in a gentrifying inner-city Victorian neighborhood. It certainly wasn't the safest community, and the apartment wasn't anything special, but we loved the location. Right outside our doorstep was a gorgeous historical park. We adopted a dog and would take her for long walks along the stone pathways and trails. The park boasted a large zoo, a public pool, athletic fields, a small lake, and a large gazebo that doubled as a bandstand in the summer. On our first Valentine's Day, I found myself pretty strapped for cash. We decided to celebrate on the cheap by having a romantic picnic at the park's gazebo. I picked up some bread, cheese, fruit, prosciutto, and a bottle of cheap wine on my way home. We packed everything in our basket and walked into the park just as the sun was setting. We laid out our blankets, lit some tea candles, and began unpacking our dinner. I was just about to open the wine when I noticed a dark figure lurking beneath a lamppost about 50 yards away, silhouetted by the light. He stood perfectly still, facing us. I couldn't see his face, but I could make out an orange knit cap and a heavy coat. He stood there facing us for about a minute, turned, and walked away. It was a little unnerving, but not anything that was going to ruin our picnic. Valentine's Day makes folks sentimental. Maybe he was just looking fondly at a young couple in love. Then I saw the mystery man slinking from bush to bush and crouching. This was odd because it's not like he was making much of an effort to hide himself. He was way taller than the bushes, and I'm sure he could see us staring right at him. So why was he doing it? Slowly, he crept from bush to bush and then darted behind a tree. Then it became clear. He was circling us and getting closer. We were rapidly losing our appetite. Who is this guy? Is he a rapist? Is he looking to mug us? Is he just some bum trying to fuck with us? It didn't matter. The mood was ruined, and we decided to end the picnic. As we were packing up our things, he stepped out from behind a tree and began walking straight to the gazebo. And then he stuck his head underneath the railing and began to climb in. In stepped a skinny, filthy old man with a spotted gray beard and intense glassy eyes that darted around in the candlelight. I grabbed the wine bottle by the neck, wielded it like a club, pointed it at him, and screamed, "We are not hanging out with you, dude." I grabbed my basket and my girlfriend and booked it out of the gazebo. He didn't try to follow us. When I turned around, he was still standing in the candlelight gazebo, staring intently at us. We ran out of the park to our apartment and called it a night. We ended up living in that neighborhood for a couple years after the incident. We never saw that guy again, but we also never went into that park after dark again. Fuck that. I've read so many stories on here, so I decided to submit mine. About 6 years ago, I was with my friend Tom at my parents' cabin. We decided to head off to a casino located on the Ojibwe Reserve, about 40 minutes away. The entire stretch of highway between is heavily forested and has no lights, meaning it can get incredibly dark. We got there and played some poker, tried a few table games, and grabbed some dinner with our winnings. Pretty successful night overall for the both of us. We ended up leaving the casino around 1 a.m., a little later than I would have liked, given the lack of any streetlights. We drive for about 20 minutes on the highway without passing any other vehicles, when I noticed 2 green orbs just off the highway before a hill. Realizing it was a deer, I slammed on the brakes and waited. Several deer crossed, and we resumed driving. The car was going slowly up the hill because it was a starting stop. As soon as we made the crest of the hill, Tom screamed, "Holy shit!" Right in front of us was a young woman walking in the middle of our lane towards us, no more than maybe 30 feet away. I slam on the brakes again and come within 10 feet of her. Thankfully, slowing down earlier and climbing the hill meant we weren't going fast. But what I was going through in my mind wasn't the fact that I nearly ran over someone. It was that this young woman with pitch black hair was wearing a white nightgown with no shoes and was still walking towards us with a blank, expressionless face. Not gonna lie, that image frightened me because it looked like something straight out of a horror movie. Tom and I waited to see if she was going to pull up to our window and maybe ask for help or something. She made it to the front of my car and went around the driver's side. She didn't stop, but raised her hand and dragged it across the side of my car while continuing her walk. At this point, Tom and I were both freaked out. I asked Tom, what do we do? He said that we should just get out of here. For whatever reason, I just didn't feel right about leaving and not asking if she was all right. I looked in the rearview mirror and saw that she was still walking. Having almost hit her and knowing that something just wasn't right, I decided to do something. I told Tom that I was going to ask if she was all right. Tom pleaded that we just go and get out of here. I put on some bravado and told him not to worry and that I would be right back. I put on my blinkers and stepped out of my car. I left my door open to provide some light, and I walked around to the trunk of my car. My interior lights didn't do much, but the blinkers allowed me to see an outline of her slightly down the hill, only able to see her every other second. I half yelled, "Are you all right?" She finally stopped walking, but still faced the other way. There was no response. I heard Tom's door open as he was getting out to join me. Suddenly, she started screaming. Tom and I ran back to my car, and I just floored it. I got a lot of shit from Tom for the remainder of the ride back to my cabin. I haven't heard or seen anything like that on the highway since then, and I'm pretty thankful for it. That was the creepiest moment of my life.